All right, so here we go. Today we're going to talk about using flipped instruction to create interactive learning communities. And what does that mean? Well, we are all working remotely and learning fast on how to do it well. Some of us may or may not be using video screencast tutorials to help support our students prior to meeting online together. And we're going to talk about how that is a really important component to our remote learning, and also how to make sure that you're doing interactive things so that it's not just about viewing a video and then going into your learning management system and completing assignment, but actually getting everyone to interact and collaborate together remotely. So before we talk any further, I want to tell you about our new YouTube channel. Krista is working hard to just make all of our videos and webinars available to you in an easy format. So please, while you are watching, if you want to go ahead to our new YouTube channel, here's the link. It's our bit.ly, and it's L.I. Arburn YouTube. And please subscribe. You can see the subscribe button there is pointed out on the screen. And this is the best way to find all of our video resources. And there is a playlist as well. So if you, that's the view where you see all the videos. But if you go to playlists, you can see them categorized. Our Tune In Tuesdays, our screencasts, and our coordinators meetings will all be grouped separately. So what is the flipped classroom? I know we're all feeling a little disoriented lately, and here is exactly kind of what's happened to us. Everything has been turned upside down. Some of you may be familiar with it, but I'm just going to go briefly over the definition of a flipped classroom. Traditionally, it's the direct instruction, which is the lecture, is taken out of the physical space of the classroom, and when you create a screencast. Students view the screencast tutorial, prepare themselves for meeting, whether it's actually in a physical space or in a remote learning environment. And when they get together, they apply what they learned watching the video. So that's the traditional format. There are a lot of variations on flipped learning. We're not going to go into them all today. This is just an overview. What we're going to do is share with you our flipped learning experience. Guy and I had the pleasure of running the PRILI, the Puerto Rican Hispanic Youth Leadership Institute, and we used flipped learning for that. So we're going to show you our platform and all the activities, some of the activities we created. So here's the definition of flipped learning. Flipped learning is a pedagogical approach in which direct instruction moves from the group learning space to the individual learning space. And the resulting group space is transformed into a dynamic, interactive learning environment where the educator guides students as they apply concepts and engage creatively in the subject matter. So what does that mean? It means that it can happen anywhere, anytime. The direct instruction is transferred to a video screencast, and then the group space, which can be in breakout sessions in your Zoom classroom or in a Google Meet online, or it can be in a physical space where we all hope to be, sometime in the future. And I envision that we are not going to give up flipped learning when we get back to our physical classroom spaces. It's actually just originally originated with the physical classroom. Just so you know, it could be done in a lot of different ways. So let's look at the flipped learning pillars. So the 4 pillars of flip: flexible environment, learning culture, intentional content, and professional educator. And if you want to read more details about these 4 pillars, you can go to the Flipped Learning Network, and there's a whole description about how you implement all these 4 pillars to make your flipped learning experience optimal. Now I want to talk about why flipped learning is great, especially for our language learners. You know, we're all working to make our remote classrooms accessible to our English language learners, right? Well, flipped learning helps us to do that by creating these video tutorials where providing multiple modalities for their learning. We're increasing student interaction by creating interactive platforms, and we'll show you interactive activities with different platforms online. We're addressing all 6 literacy skills, including viewing and visually representing. We all know about listening, speaking, reading, writing, swirl, but we cannot forget the 21st century skills of viewing and visually representing as explicit literacy skills to be taught. It provides multimedia support for content. Obviously, all that multimedia support is going to help ELs access the content. It allows us to differentiate. We can create little mini tutorials for our ELs to target a language concept or something in content to make it more accessible. It obviously allows for asynchronous instruction because they can view it anytime, anywhere, as many times as they want. And that's very helpful. There's more time for visible learning because you take all the lecture out and you get the students to work together, to work on tasks, and you get to see where their knowledge is. There's more time for teacher feedback because you're not lecturing as much. And it promotes self-directed learning. And we're learning a lot about that on our remote learning adventure, how to get our kids to be self-directed and stay on task, and how to engage them so that they're enjoying themselves. Finally, it increases the opportunity to use the target language in context. So that includes the home language. When you're creating screencasts, you can do them in any language you choose. And that's a beautiful thing. And you can then differentiate by pushing those out to the different students in your classroom. It's really helpful. So I mentioned the 6 literacy skills, and here they are categorized as receptive and expressive, just to remind you that when you are using the flipped learning model, you're addressing all of these skills. And once you have this video, it's not enough to just have them watch the video and then give them an assignment to do together. We want to create an interactive environment, and there are so many digital resources that can do that. I like to point out some of the most simple, something like Voice Record Pro or any voice recorder where students can create podcasts, again, in multiple languages, and have them published to an authentic audience online. This is the beauty of online learning, when we can reach beyond the classroom, reach beyond our typical audience, the teacher or our classmates, and actually publish to authentic audiences. So something like Voice Record Pro, or creating something in Toontastic, where you have this animation, very simple to use animation app where the students can do storytelling, use their own voice, and it's a lot of fun. I love Bitsboards. Bitsboard is a great vocabulary app, and it can be allowed you to differentiate. It can be used in a lot of different ways. You can differentiate and target language needs that way. And there's so many here that I like. I think you may have heard of Flipgrid. We're going to talk about that a little later on. And some of the platforms like Seesaw, which really help kids not only to get assignments, but to curate their materials. It becomes a student portfolio. So it's really a great platform, as well as Nearpod, another platform that has a lot of L resources and L library and allows the students and the teachers to interact. So I'm going to show you, I'm just going to put my headphones back on because I need those AirPods, I'm too cheap to buy them. I bought them for my kids, but not for myself. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to show you 2 examples of a screencast. One is for the elementary levels, one is for the secondary level. Both are have a reading assignment. One was posted in the platform Seesaw, and one was using Edpuzzle. So you get to see different ways of doing this. So let me play this for you. Okay, so you can see this, right? And it worked for me before. All right. All right, we're going to give that a minute to cook and see if we can get that to roll. I'll try sharing my screen again. You know, we have to be patient with technology. And it could just be bandwidth is a challenge right now because we have a lot of people online. But what I can do, what I will do is share the link so you can see it. And I'll go back to the presentation and just walk you through walk you through what I did. All right. So here we go. So with the Seesaw screencast, it was for third grade literacy. It was a limerick. I recited the limerick for them, used my bouncy voice, told them about the bouncy rhythm and the rhyme scheme, and then used the laser pointer to highlight the rhythm so that they could repeat. And now at home, you can imagine them watching me say it. Then I say, okay, do it with me. And then they are all hopefully reciting and following the bouncing ball. And then the next thing was, okay, now you're going to write your own limerick. And I'd give them instructions on that. And then, of course, we would have those limericks to share. So and they would upload them into Seesaw, which everyone loves Seesaw. It's really well used. So the other example, and I'm afraid to give it a try, but let's see if it's going to work. Is an Edpuzzle, and before I try to launch it, and I won't take too long, I will just explain what it is. In this case, I took a video that was already available in Khan Academy, and if you know Edpuzzle, there are all these channels you can pull from: TED Ed, Khan Academy, YouTube, many others, and you can pull those videos in and embed questions, right? So, and there's a whole system of assessment, and as a classroom, you can monitor their progress. Very powerful tool. I chose this example because it was also a reading activity where the teacher read the letter to the students and then embedded questions, comprehension questions. I went in, used his activity, and then added my own audio notes. And I always start with an audio note in the beginning to prepare the students for what they're going to hear. So you could put that little audio note in addition to adding questions. You know, it's not just about comprehension, it's about personalizing it and making it interactive. And the beautiful thing is you can replace the entire audio track and record it in whatever language you choose. Sometimes you find something that's great and it's too fast. You can record it in your own voice and do it slower and also make it more personal. And that's why I always recommend that you show your face in these screencasts because it keeps the kids connected and interested. And if you're making mistakes, just keep going. You know, it's you with your students just as you would be in front of the classroom. So when you are building your first video, here are some of the tools you'll need. Now, let me just hide my toolbar 1 second so you can see it. Okay, so there are several categories here that you need. It's very simple. You start with your presentation tool. I used Google Slides, all right? And then you need something to screencast, to record. So there are several options that are listed here. Actually, the Seesaw presentation was done in Zoom. And I've done others in Explain Everything. I've used Screencastify, and you can also just use QuickTime if you have a Mac. I mean, so you have whatever platform you need a screencasting tool, right? Hosting and sharing, YouTube channel. Our LMS here at Long Island Auburn is Google Classroom, and that's where we would post our work. And then your LMS, whatever that may be. I put down Canvas, but it could be anything. It could be Schoology, it could be any number of learning management systems, depending on which one your district uses. Finally, I'm mentioning the interactive tools. Whatever platform, whatever app that allows you to engage in content creation, allowing students to demonstrate mastery, allowing students to use language and collaborate with others. There are many, many, many apps we could talk about, but we just listed Flipgrid, Edpuzzle, and PlayPosit because they allow you to interact with the video screencast with each other. And so that's why we listed those there. All right, so 4 key questions to ask yourself when you are designing your flipped learning activities. What am I moving out of class and what am I putting into class and why? So why am I making the screencast? Is it to provide a brief lecture on a historical fact or a scientific concept? Or am I recording directions so that students understand an activity they're going to complete? And why, what am I doing in class to support that? Because you're gonna have more time to engage and you wanna do something that is project-based, inquiry-based, that allows the students to create and collaborate and make it fun and engaging. So that gets to my next point. Question to ask: how to maximize interaction and differentiation, and how to maximize comprehension and retention. So that even as they're viewing these videos, and if you're embedding questions, you have to do a comprehension check. If you check in with everyone online before you go into a breakout rooms or something and ask, check in. Did you like the video? Did you watch the video? Did you understand the video? What did you take away from that? So some brief comprehension check, and you can have them view it again, or you can adjust according to the student's needs. All right, last thing, accountability and feedback. You know, we want to make sure that students are participating, and a lot of these platforms have built-in ways of managing that. In this environment right now, we just want to invite students to participate and use as much compassion and empathy as we can. These are difficult times. We want to give a lot of feedback on the actual content creation and the activity, and help them and support them to make sure that they can work at home. This is another conversation that we could have another Tune In Tuesday about, but we have to be very compassionate right now when we're discussing accountability and feedback. So we have to be very flexible. All right, so I am going to hand this presentation over to Guy, and he is going to talk about what our PryLive flipped learning experience was all about.
Great, thank you, Heather. And I will go, do you mind I'll share mine?
Yes.
Okay, great. So if you stop sharing.
Yeah, I think you could override me. Go
awesome.
ahead.
Okay, so now I'm going to share. Let's get to this. And buffer.
Is it spinning? Oh, so somebody, while we're waiting for that, Lilia has asked, what is audio notes? Audio notes is, you can find it in Edpuzzle, just the same place that you embed questions. When they ask you to embed in a multiple choice or a short answer question, you can also embed audio note. So what I love about that, again, is the interaction and the personalization. It brings you into their house. So you place the audio note along the thread where the student, you know, where the film is, where you want it to be inserted in the thread. Again, I do it in the beginning. And then again, sometime in the middle to say, hey, you're still listening? You know, I'll put my voice back in there. And then at the end, I'll put it in and say, well, I hope you enjoyed that, or this is what I'm going to do next, right? So that's what audio notes are.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Let me take a look at your.
So I am trying to.
I'm making you a co-host, Guy. It seems like for some reason you were a co-host, but.
Technology. All right,
Yeah.
so now I'm trying to share my screen here. I hit share, and oh, of course, let's do this.
You have a lot of windows open there.
Yeah, I do. That could be part of the problem. All right. So everyone can see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay,
There's,
great. This is what happened before I got kicked out.
yes.
All right, so I wanted just to give people a brief background of Pride Line, just because, just to get to know what we're doing here. So the Puerto Rican Hispanic Youth Leadership Institute is a program where the Arbor and Heather and I train students from all Long Island school districts on the New York State legislative process and parliamentary procedures. Students have an opportunity to research proposed actual New York State bills. Um, if chosen, they get to participate in a mock assembly up in Albany. And in addition to that, if they attend the Institute, they get to apply for a college scholarship. There are many scholarships available. Our students, you talk about variety. We have L's at different proficiency levels, from students who just arrived 6 months ago to students who are former L's. And again, as I mentioned, they're throughout all of Long Island school districts. And it was an interesting experience because some districts were using a management learning system such as Google Classroom, others were not. So trying to get the students to use it and to train them on that. Well, let me just go on and show you. There's a lot that we have to cover, right? And it's in the span of 3 months. However, in those 3 months, we only meet once. So our first session that happened December 11th, between the first and second session, there was a 4-week span. So there was a lot of time there that we could be preloading or reviewing material. In addition, the difference between session 1 and between session 1 and session 2, we also had the Christmas break. Then we come back, we have our session 2, and then we have session 2 to session 3 was about 3 weeks. And then we had the winter break in February, and then so it was about 4 weeks. There's a lot of time that we thought we could add materials. So we decided to use Google Classroom. Now that worked for us. And I want to quote what someone said in a former Tune In Tuesday, Hilly Marshall. She said it's the principles, not the application. So this is not a training on Google Classroom, but just the platform that we used. And it worked for us because we wanted to be able to communicate with the students when we were not in the classroom. And hence we used the stream feature of Google Classroom. And then we also wanted to be able to assign work, whether it was pre-work before coming to see us or an extension and review of what we were going to do. And as Heather mentioned earlier, there's so many other platforms, right? Schoology, Moodle. So this is not about Google Classroom, but just what we used in this platform. We set up our Google Classroom into tabs where students had the opportunity to look at training sessions and the online modules. The training sessions was the material that we covered in class. And the online modules was, of course, the pre-work and the extension activities. In these modules, take a look to the right, you have the instructional materials that we used. We embedded and we linked and downloaded slide presentations. And those were basically what we did in class that day, kind of like if you were doing an interactive whiteboard and you had your aim and do now and your mini lesson, everything that we did for that day was on our slide presentations. We included and uploaded and downloaded PDFs for resources we wanted them to read. We used videos, whether they were videos that through YouTube or videos that we created. We had links, web links to resources for students. We attached rubrics that students could use. We had graphic organizers. We used Google Docs and forms just to assess and comprehension check. And we used an interactive learning platform, Flipgrid, which we'll see a bit later. So these are all the things that we used. And I'm still in the learning process. I've only been doing this for 3 years, but again, it's a 3-month span. So we'll take a look at it. One thing that we thought of, Heather, you mentioned earlier, you have to kind of think about what are you going to take out of the in-person classroom and what can you do or students can do outside the classroom. Well, one of the major components of the Puerto Rican Hispanic Youth Leadership Institute, or PRILI, is a scholarship essay that students have an opportunity to apply for. A lot goes into this scholarship essay, and so what we decided to do is we created a module. What we did in class, we looked at the rubric for the scholarship, and then we gave them we did a mini lesson, and we looked at one scholarship and we talked about how it was rated using the rubric. And then students worked on they worked on another scholarship essay that they looked at using the language of the rubric. Fine, that's a small example and very little practice. So we thought, well, let's take that out of the classroom and give them an opportunity to take a look at other essays and review them based on the rubric, and then rate those essays as if they were the raters. So we created our assignment, right? And every assignment we created in English and Spanish. So we did that, and then we attached the rubrics, again, in English and in Spanish. And then we downloaded PDFs of Spanish essays. And we also obviously downloaded essays, well, wrong one, in English as well. Let's see. Here are all my Spanish essays. Osma Canales, this is also in Spanish. Of course, there's one. Okay, so we downloaded examples of different essays in both languages. And we gave students the opportunity to, depending on their language proficiency, we gave them the opportunity to review out of all the essays, 3 essays, and they could have been all in Spanish, all in English, or we invited students to do English and Spanish if they were bilingual. So those were some examples of work that they could do afterwards. So we did a mini lesson, and then this was an extension activity. I'm going to go back here, hopefully. Now, another thing, Heather, you mentioned we're in the situation right now where everyone's doing distance and remote learning. However, this is something to also consider moving forward as we return back to the classroom to incorporate flipped learning, right? Other things that we did was, as I mentioned, we had examples where we activated their schema and build background knowledge. So here was an activity where they viewed a video that we uploaded, and then we had them self-reflect on their leadership skills and what they bring. And then after doing this activity, once they came back to us, we went into an activity where students broke up into groups and listed names of leaders throughout history or just in their personal lives, in their community, and the skills that they possessed. So that was an activity we did. Another idea was the use of graphic organizers. As we mentioned, they are looking at proposed New York State bills. And so we created graphic organizers that they could have either in English or in Spanish, and generate those ideas. And that was work that they could do from home prior to arriving to class, so that would stimulate the discussion and the group work. We also preloaded them with vocabulary as well as sentence frames and starters. They participate, as we mentioned, in the New York State Assembly mock assembly. And in that, there's certain language that they must use. And in doing that, we provided that information for them ahead of time. And so that when they came back to us in class, we were able to give them, here's 5 minutes to review your notes and your cards. And then we played a heads up game where they reviewed the vocabulary words. We also had some script for them to follow, so we provided that as well. And that was stuff that they could do on their own prior to getting into class. Then we could do a review and not spend a lot of time and use that in our debate practices. Okay, we also used it for communication purposes. Again, there were 3 and 4 week lags between the time we would see the students. And so if there was something we wanted them to know about, it was easy for us just to do it through the stream on Google Classroom. So during the break, the midwinter break, this opportunity came up. It was only in English, so we uploaded the PDF, but then I had it translated to the best of my knowledge and provide the students with that information. Also, Heather was able to upload a video for them to look at, and also the document to read in Spanish should they require it in Spanish. As we mentioned, we also used Flipgrid, and that was an opportunity for students to be very interactive, and I'll show you an example. So after all the program is almost completed, students can nominate themselves for what's called specialty roles, which is during the weekend when we're up in Albany during the mock assembly. And so normally we used to do that in the classroom, and they would come up and speak and the students would vote. And we thought, well, why don't we get them to interact and create like campaign videos? So that was our assignment, which had a link to the Flipgrid where students can click on. And so once they clicked onto the Flipgrid, this is what they saw. We gave them a brief description of what they needed, what was required, what the specialty roles were that they could nominate themselves for, moderator, assistant speaker, or closing remarks. And then we gave them an example of a speech, a sample script. We gave them the definition of special roles, and then a video of the actual special roles of students in the past doing those roles. So then the students created their own videos. And this was the first time we did this, and it was interesting to see. I think I had more problems trying to manipulate this or see how to use it than the students. They just pick it up quickly. Here we had 6 students who self-nominated themselves for different roles. And if you look on the bottom, my 2 students, Daniel and Oscar in his speech says that he's only been here for 6 months, but yet he had a platform to interact and feel part of the class. Now, I'm not showing you the videos only because just for the identity of students, in the videos, there's a banner and it says their name, and the students also say their name. So I didn't want to show that. But the students were able to go on, create the videos. Then all the other students were able to go on and now vote. And those were our instructions. Again, the link to Flipgrid and the Google form that we created where students can vote. So this was just a brief example of how we incorporated flipped learning in our Pri-Li workshop. And as we move forward, I'm already thinking about how can I use other features, such as possibly the video chat by using Google Meets. So I'm going to explore that. What we would like to do is for Follow-Up Friday, which is between 10:30 and 11:30 this Friday, we'd like to hear from you and ask you to share your ideas and how you have used Flip Learning. We ask you to email us at liarburn@esboces.org. And if you can email us no later than Thursday so that we can coordinate that, we'll have you present if you'd like to show what you're doing. If it's a different platform, if it's the same platform, that would be great. And so basically that was my quick tutorial on how I used or we used flipped learning in the Pri-Li classroom.
All right. Thank you, Guy.
You got it.
So I'm going to share my screen and talk a little bit more before we open up for questions. All right. So let me just advance through this. It really was an incredible experience. I saw some questions in the chat about Flipgrid. We are having a Flipgrid tutorial by one of our tech consultants. She's going to walk you through and introduce you to Flipgrid. That's coming up in a few weeks. We will send out information about that for those of you who are new to Flipgrid. And please, as Guy said, we really welcome your expertise and sharing with your colleagues. We had a great Follow-Up Friday last week, and we need you to make that possible. So let's just talk about the culturally responsive instruction that we all know we need to address. We have to support our linguistically diverse learners. Flipping supports linguistically diverse learners, but the teacher creates the interactive collaborative activities, the creation and the research has to be designed to support our learners. So we showed you how we build background knowledge, using multi-level text and bilingual texts, making sure you tier vocabulary, incorporating activities to scaffold the conversation in the target language. We mentioned all of these things, sentence frames, graphic organizers. Something we didn't talk about was modifying assessments. And this is always a great conversation starter. Maybe that's a future Tune-In Tuesday as well. But really modifying assessments so that you accurately can get an accurate assessment of your students' mastery. Because oftentimes we give our Ls the same exam in a social studies class as we would to all the other students in the class. And that's just may not be appropriate for that student based on their language proficiency level. So keep that in mind, and keep in mind that there are other ways to assess their mastery of the content, using something like a Flipgrid as an assessment tool, using a screencast that the students create as a way to measure their progress is a great idea. And finally, being able to publish work in multiple languages. It's with all the different translation tools we now have, is really, it really support us in doing this and meeting that goal. So here are the links to the Flip Learning Network and the Flip Learning Global Initiative. I really think that, if anything, this pandemic has shown us how small the world is and how we need to work together. And the Global Initiative is amazing. You can be collaborating with people from all over the world on Flip Learning. Here are some references if you want to do some reading about Flip Learning. And again, the Follow-Up Friday, don't forget, we need you. I will send this PDF to everyone who's registered in MLP so that you can view it on your own before the recording. You can watch the video, but that you have the PDF and you can go to the links that we were unable to access so that you can see those videos. And so now I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let's check the time. It is 1:45. 3, which means we have, I'm sorry, we started at 2, right? So we are actually running over. But if anyone has a burning question and they're willing to stay for just a couple of moments, we will address your questions. So just feel free to unmute yourself and
Heather, I do want to bring up, someone was asking, it looks great for the secondary classroom. What about elementary classroom? And I just want to mention that a colleague of mine uses actually Google Classroom as well in their 3rd grade class. And they use the videos, and they started using Google Forms. And yesterday was the first time, which kind of made me think about for Pryline, started using the Google Meetup with the class. And,
yeah, and
and go ahead.
yeah, I know. And Guy, I know that that is a common concern about the elementary level. And that's why I wanted to show you the screencast that I was using in the 3rd grade. But I want to also, I hope to recruit some people for Friday, because this is being used in the lower grades successfully.
Right.
It's really a question of, I mean, imagine your kindergartners getting to watch a video of you that you may have to have the, it depends on the parent involvement at that point, but it does happen. Seesaw is very, very user friendly for those things, but there are other ways of sharing out videos to parents and then having them view them together with the youngest of your students. But when you get up to 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, oh, absolutely flipping the classroom. Kids love to watch videos.
Right,
There's
right.
no reason why
And
you
I
can't use it.
and I would like to confess to everyone that I'm definitely not an expert on this. And what I usually do is I go on the computer and I search, can I do, and I'm a visual learner, so I'll read it, but then I'll see if there's a YouTube video or something to kind of help
Right.
me, because there's so many platforms out there. Which one do I use? How do I use it? So I'm kind of focused on 2 of them right now that I'm working on, right? So the classroom and using Flipgrid, and try, and I go through that uncomfortable feeling, and so I do that, and I work on one till I feel real more comfortable and more proficient. Then I move on to the other, because I can't tackle all these different things.
Yeah, and Debbie mentioned she's posted Nearpods for her K and 1, because you can embed video and give the kids the option to draw, which again,
Absolutely.
all of these different modalities, all these different ways, visually representing knowledge. This is the power of these tools. And please remember, before we wrap, because we are running out of time, that it's not about the video. It's about what you do with all of the time you now have to create and be on task and collaborate and allow the students to show what they know. So the video is a way of freeing us
Right.
from that timely task. And we can
Right.
always do little mini lessons in the classroom or in the breakout sessions. It doesn't mean you do nothing. When these kids are working collaboratively, you could be pulling some kids aside in a breakout room and giving them a little mini lesson. It doesn't take the teacher out of the picture. It gives the teacher more time to be truly facilitating learning, hands-on, very personalized instruction.
Absolutely. The other thing is, there were students in our class that would come in with their laptops. And then there were students that didn't have laptops, were using their phones. And and again, I'm still amazed, right? So they're doing everything on their phones.
Yeah.
So,
Which brings up the whole accessibility issue, which we are all urgently addressing right now. I think one of the silver linings to this terrible, terrible situation is that we are seeing the gap in 21st century tools and resources and the need for equitable access, not just to the actual laptop device, but to Wi-Fi and to parental support.
right.
It just goes on and on. But the thing is, it can be done. And I see some questions I just wanted to address. Somebody said, oh, they're going so quick after the Nearpod. if students are creating videos and posting on Flipgrid, do you recommend getting parents' consent? So do know that Flipgrid, all of these apps, your district needs to have approved. There are COPA laws and all of the kinds of laws that these platforms must adhere to. So your district has a list of the platforms that they can use and will not require necessarily parental consent if they're using a district account. So that's all taken care of when they sign up for these things. So check with your tech coordinators, your district coordinators also, to see that these things are compliant.
Right. Good point.
Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this session. You can continue asking us questions. Simply email us and we'd be happy to talk about this some more. And I hope that you'll explore flipped learning. So we look forward to seeing you on Friday for our follow-up, and we can address some of your questions there as well. So have a good day, everybody. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Guy and
you.
Heather, thanks so much.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you.
Bye,
Great
Joy.
stuff. I took notes.